How's it going, everyone? This is Jason coming from you, South Korea, and today um, we're gonna go over one of the actual um, real world use cases that I'm also part of developing with the organization I'm one of the co-founders of, which is called the Leopard Society. So today we're gonna go over the foundational architecture and the build progress that the Leopard Society is currently doing. That and they are using the the NeoState framework that I have um, come up with. So this is like pretty much the Leopard Society is going to be the first actual live use case of the NeoState framework. So today we're pretty much going to go over, how how each layer operates. It's separating vision, private governance, nonprofit compliance, commercial uh, execution, and digital infrastructure to ensure scalability and resilience. So currently, the Leopard Society, with the different layers that we're currently working on, we're at about 51% complete, and all the whole foundational structural elements that is needed to build the overall um, structure for the Leopard Society. So, just real quick rundown who I am, where I'm from. I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana. I am a Black American man who served 14 plus years in the United States Air Force as a 3E5X1, which is called engineering, in the United States Air Force Civil Engineering Squadron. I have worked on multiple multi-million dollar construction projects. Being the core representative, I've managed people, programs, and budgets. I have lived in 3 different countries. I have, you know, even ran a business on the side where I sold items to different people in different countries, several different countries. Um, so I have a lot of experience that I bring to not just the Neil State framework, but also to other organizations that invites me to join. So I bring a wealth of knowledge and experience that I do believe is valuable to the Leopard Society, what we're doing at Leopard Society, what we're going to do in the future. So just wanted to say that, and I'm also currently in college getting more education to improve and develop my skills so I can become a much better person for society, so I can offer more value. And that's me. So let's begin. Okay, so just real quick to run down what we're going to go over today. All right, the agenda, what foundational components means. So, like if you've seen the previous video about the NeoState frame, so essentially what I went over in the NeoState frame, we're essentially talking about that for what we're doing at Leopard Society. So, like I said, the NeoState frame was like this is the idea, this is the framework that it can be used, that can create a micro society that coexists parallel to the bigger society. In this case, we're talking about the U.S. because a lot of the stuff I'm talking about is based off of U.S. laws, not South Korea, not overseas laws. So we're focused on the U.S. when we talking. If you in a different country and you're interested, reach out to me and I can see the slides so you can see how you can, or you and me, we can work together to adjust it to where it fits legally with your country. But just keep in mind what we're talking about is in regards to operating within the U.S. Legal framework. No, nobody else right now. So that's just keep that in mind. So 5 layer control architecture. We're gonna go over what each layer does, why separation matters, um, current progress by layer for the Leopard Society, and near-term milestones and decisions needed. All right. So what you're looking at is a reverse pyramid. This is like I said, specifically for the Leopard Society, because we are actually taking the Neo State framework and we're actually applying it to how we are structuring and building our society that we want to have coexist alongside the bigger society in the U.S. So there's 5 different layers: the strategic report, which is the strategic doctrine; the PMA Constitution Charter, which is for private membership governance. Then we are at the TLS 501c3 bylaws, which is nonprofit legal governance. And then you have fourth down the TLS Holding Company LLC documents, which is for commercial and asset governance. Then the bottom layer, which I think is one of the most important layers, is your NeoState, which is a digital infrastructure and for digital infrastructure and execution. So the key point to keep in mind: authority types differ. Guidance versus member binding versus legal binding versus technical enforcement. So keep that in mind with the various layers that encompasses the overall Leopard Society. Now, so starting off with the first layer, which is the strategic doctrine guidance layer. Right now, for each layer we're gonna go over, we're gonna also just making some adjustments to my screen here. All right. So for each layer we're gonna go over, we're gonna talk about the component, the purpose, why it matters, how it works for the Leopard Society, and the progress block for each different layer that we're on. All right. So for the strategic doctrine layer, which is the guidance layer, the component is the strategic report. So think of the strategic report as like the national security document that gets published by the U.S. that states this is what the U.S. plans to focus on. This is what the U.S. determines is some of our very important things to focus on economically, strategically, resources and whatnot. So the strategic doctrine is the purpose is for vision, doctrine, and long-term direction, non-binding guidance. Now, why it matters: it aligns decisions across the PMA level, nonprofit, LLC, and the platform. Prevents mission drift, which is very important. So, how does it work for the Leopard Society? It defines long-term goals plus philosophy, sets economic, governance, and development models, informs research programs and platform evolution, does not override legal documents. So currently for the strategic level that we're currently working on for the Leopard Society, we're in progress and we're at 75% completion. We're currently working on another version of the draft for the strategic report, but our next milestone is hopefully another draft review that will ideally lead to the final version of the strategic report. So going down to the next layer, which is the private membership governance, the PMA. Now, the component is the PMA Constitution or private membership charter. The purpose is internal governance for the private membership association, binding on consenting members only. This is a very important part here. Each person in your, and for the sake of this presentation, we're gonna say community. For everyone in your community, they must give consent to follow this layer. They consent to following the PMA charter that you have set forth for your members in your community. So, and ways to go about having that binding consent is you have a contract for each member in your community to sign, and the contract pretty much is in reflection of what the Constitution charter states, and it's pretty much saying that, hey, I have read the charter, I understand what the rules are, what I understand in my member rights and responsibilities, and with that, I give my consent and I sign, without being coerced, the contract that binds me to this. So that's something to keep in mind. So it creates a voluntary member framework with enforceable internal rules without confusing public and nonprofit compliance. So again, how does this work for Leopard Society? Defines member rights and responsibilities, establish governance processes, set dispute resolution, internal review pathway, applies only to members who consent. So currently, for the Leopard Society, we're at 80% completion with this layer. Right now, our current charter is out for signatures. We have 3 out of the 5, waiting on 2 more. And then after we get the final signatures, we will then publish that Constitution within our Discord. and then draft up the contracts for the first members to give consent and sign to, including myself. All right. So now to the next layer, the nonprofit legal governance, 501c3. This is for the Leopard Society. So we are halfway through. So we already did file for a corporation for a nonprofit. It's 501c3. This is really driven by like the bylaws, right? So the purpose is governance of the nonprofit corporation, binding under state and IRS rules. Why it matters: ensures fiduciary accountability, public benefit compliance, and eligibility for donations and grants. Now, how does it work for the Leopard Society? Defines board structure and authority, set fiduciary duties and compliance obligations, oversees charitable programs and public benefit activities, operates independently of the PMA, clear separation. So you have the PMA, then you have the 501c3. All right, these are two separate bodies that is part of the overall envelope of the Leopard Society. So once we finish our constitution, once that gets finalized, then we will use that to draft up the bylaws for the 501c3. And then after we have the bylaws, we then are going to apply for our tax exemption to the IRS. And then after we get that, then we better open our bank account, and then we better start taking in donations. Now, the way donations is going to go is we're going to use tools to ensure people get their receipts, ensure that we have accountability, so there's no confusion, there's no murkiness going on, where if you donate, you get a receipt for your donation. So because that's how it should be, right? There's no reason we shouldn't be, there's no reason to be dependent on like tools like Cash App to accept donations, because then that just creates additional administration work for you that you need to do. And if you're a brand new organization, you might not have the manpower to do all that additional administration work. So it's just smart to use technologies to automate certain processes where you don't have to worry about trying to hire people in the beginning. You can just use digital tools to do that for you and keep you compliant. All right, so then the next layer is the commercial and asset governance, the holding company. The component is, like I said, the TLS Holding Company LLC. We haven't started this yet. That's going to be down the road. The first three layers, we have already started the processes for that. Those are in the works. The documents that govern this, articles of organization, operating agreement. The purpose of this layer is commercial operations and asset ownership. All right. Now, why it matters: it separates risk, enables revenue, manages assets like real estate, IP, platform licensing, and supports sustainability for the overall organization. Now, how does this work for the Leopard Society? Holds, manage real estate, platforms, IP licenses, governs revenue, expenses, and subsidiaries, interfaces with vendors, partners, and investors. Funds ecosystem sustainability without contaminating nonprofits compliance, right? Because there's certain type of business activities that if done wrong can impede upon the compliance of the 501c3. And with our 501c3, we plan to have like educational programs and support programs for our community. So we don't want to risk violating any compliance rules that can then hurt that entity. So we want to separate any type of activities that can impede upon our 501c layer, and we're going to put it into a separate layer where that layer can do all the other things that we need done without violating the other one, right? Remember, we want to have clear separation where each component plays its part for the overall organization. That is very important. All right, then we have the final layer of that reverse pyramid, which is the digital infrastructure and execution, NeoState. All right, we currently do have a version that's out that's being used internally, of course, which this is internal to anyways. And the most important thing about this is this pretty much supports all the other layers, right? Now, the purpose is operational enablement and system execution, like technical enforcement, not legal authority. Why it matters: it creates auditable workflows, identify membership tooling, and transparent governance tools and records. So, how does this benefit the Leopard Society? Digital identity and membership management, governance workflows and records, transparency, auditability, reporting, and modular systems usable by the Leopard Society and other adopters. So currently we have 40%. Like I said, we already have a version that's operating right now, that's live. But as we progress, we will develop that one to become more mature and more suitable to support the layers that I mentioned before. So out of 5 of the layers, we are already actively engaged in 4 of them are in progress. It's the only one not started is the LLC, the holding company. So to kind of give a little bit more, I guess, to help you better understand how these layers, the authority map of each layer. So, read. All right. So, I have some notes. So, this map clarifies what governs what and where authority actually lives. The right here, the PMA Constitution binds. Oh, my bad. Skip around, my bad. So this map clarifies what governs what and where authority actually lives. The strategic report sets vision and doctrine, but it never overrides legal documents. The PMA Constitution binds only members who voluntarily opt in. So it governs internal membership, rules, and dispute processes. For the public benefit work, the 501c3 bylaws are the highest authority because they're legally binding under state and IRS compliance. For revenue contracts and asset ownership, the holding company's operating agreement is the highest authority under business law. NeoState is the execution layer. It runs workflows, records decisions, and improves transparency and auditability, but it does not create legal authority. The separation is important. Um, oh, the separation is intentional. It prevents conflicts, protects compliance, and lets the organization scale without mixing governance domains. This is very important because you could probably think of examples of where things got mixed up, and because things got mixed up, it caused certain organizations to be non-compliant anymore because it was doing things that they should not have been doing within that certain entity. So the whole purpose of the NeoState framework and how we're using it is to ensure there's clear separation so we can have the envelope, which is our own micro society that coexists amongst the bigger society. And in this example, we're talking about the US. But in order to do that, in order to stay compliant, you have to have certain entities in place that follow certain laws and rules so you don't compromise any of your components that then will not allow you to operate in your own little micro bubble within the US. So it's very important to have clear separation of the responsibilities for each layer of your organization, community in this case. So just to recap, the strategic report. The strategic report is guidance, no legal override. PMA Constitution, binding on consenting members only. 501c3 bylaws, highest legal authority for nonprofit activity. LLC operating agreement, highest legal authority for commercial assets and operations. NeoState, execute workflows, not legal authority. And you can look at the map here, it shows you that the strategic report informs all the 4 layers below it. It informs the PMA, 501c3, LLC, and even NeoState, and implements, records, is handled at the NeoState layer, which is your digital infrastructure. So that's very important to keep in mind with this whole framework. So so now going on to the next slide, where interlayers interfaces and how layers coordinate. So this slide shows coordination across layers without mixing authority. The strategic report is the guidance layer. It sets doctrine and priorities that shape policies, programs, and platform development. The PMA is the internal member governance layer. It defines how members operate and can recommend initiatives upward to the nonprofit for for benefit for for public benefit execution or to the LLC for commercial execution. Let me say that line again. The PMA is the internal member governance layer. It defines how members operate and can recommend initiatives upward to the nonprofit, really downward to the nonprofit for public benefit execution or to the LLC for commercial execution. The 501c3 is where charitable programs run, funded through donations and governed by compliance obligations, with reporting duties that protect legitimacy. The holding company, LLC, handles the commercial side, vendors, contracts, assets, and IP licensing, and it can fund platform and operational build out sustainability. NeoState is the execution and record layer. It runs workflows, manages identity membership tooling, and preserves decision records and audit trails so each governing body can provide the what happened, when, and why. The key idea is clean interfaces. Guidance flows down, recommendations flow across, money and contracts flow through the LLC, and evidence and reporting flow through NeoState. This is very important. Because we've seen in so many different organizations where these things get either not tracked. Nobody knows who made the decision. Nobody knows who funded that. We don't know where the money went because there was poor systems in place, right? We live in the 21st century. There's no reason we should not be having systems in place that automates and helps with tracking and keeping accountability, and also helping make decisions so we can run very effective societies. There's no reason for that. So just to recap, the strategic report informs PMA policies, nonprofit programs, and NeoState roadmap. The PMA sets member governance, recommends initiatives to nonprofit and LLC. 501c3 runs charitable programs, receives donations, reports compliance. LLC manages vendors, contracts, assets, licenses, IP, funds development. NeoState executes workflow, records decisions, supports audit reporting. All right, this is the whole thing of how you can operate your own like micro society within the bigger society, right? Having these components serve as like it's just it just makes sense, right? You want to ensure your foundation is solid. You want to make sure your systems are in place. You want to make sure every entity or governance understands their rules and responsibilities so they can stay within their lane so everything can operate efficiently and structured. And additionally, just looking at it, it also decentralizes decisions and authority so it's not centralized. And that gives you added protection from outside actors who want to try to take you down. So going on to the roadmap. And once again, this roadmap is in reflection of what the Left Society is currently doing, right? So just keep that in mind. This is pretty much showing what we're currently going on, but this is just an example. A lot, real world use case. So this roadmap is a sequence proposal, not a dated schedule. The goal is to stand up every layer in a control order so we don't mix authority or create compliance risk. We lock in the strategic report version 1 so we can publish because it aligns priorities and prevents drift. In parallel, we complete the PMA Constitution charter through review and ratification so member governance is real and enforceable for consenting members. Next, we draft, finalize, and adopt the 501c3 bylaws to ensure nonprofit governance and fiduciary compliance are solid before expanding public-facing programs. Then we form and operationalize the holding company LLC. So commercial activity, assets, contracts, and IP licensing have the contract legal home. Finally, we mature NeoState from working platform to trusted execution layer by completing the feature set, running security review, and standing up reporting and audit dashboards. Once these milestones are complete, the Leopard Society has a durable foundation that can scale programs, members, and operations without confusion. Let me say that last line again. Once these milestones are completed, the Leopard Society has a durable foundation that can scale programs, members, and operations without confusion. Right now, we don't have that many members, which is okay because we aren't there yet. Right now, we're looking to establish the foundation first, all right? Because think about it, in the past, you'll see people who get money before they even have a foundation, and then the money gets wasted. Resources get mismanaged, things everyone lose track. The point of this exercise is to ensure we have a strong foundation in place. We have strong systems in place. Everyone knows their role, their responsibility. They stay in a lane. So when we do start bringing in more resources, getting more members, we already have everything in place. We can tell you where to go. We can tell you what to do because we established a strong foundation. So let me say that last line one more time. Once these milestones are complete, the Leopard Society has a durable foundation that can scale programs, members, and operations without confusion. That is more important, right? It's not necessarily important to move fast when you have chaos. You should take your time and establish. You should move fast after you have everything in place. Once you have systems in place, once you know who needs to do what, after you have that, then you can move fast. But until then, you should move slow, crawl before you walk. So, moving on to the next slide. Where we at? All right. So, this slide is here to protect execution. We're building legal and operational foundations. So we need a reliable process that prevents confusion and circular debates. Each layer has a single accountable owner and only one active draft moves forward at a time. Feedback must be written and time boxed so we can consolidate it into the next version instead of arguing in real time. Version control keeps everyone aligned on what is current and prevents accidental regressions. Any proposed change must include a clear rationale, what problem it solves, and what impact it has. Finally, progress is tracked in one place so nobody has to guess what's done, what's in review, and what's next. This is very important. In my years of working in the government, even the private sector, these are best practices used for doing anything. You have one person who's the owner, and in some cases you might have a alternate just in case the main person can't help out or whatever. But it's important you have one owner per layer, so they can control the whole thing effectively and not have confusion. So just to recap, one owner per layer, one draft in motion at a time. Feedback is written, time boxed, and consolidated. No live debate in the chat. That is not going to work. You're going to get circular arguments and you don't get nowhere. You get no progress. Version control is mandatory. That's not a question. It is mandatory. Clear titles, dates, change log. Changes require rationale. Identify the issue, provide this fix, and explain the impact of the fix that you suggested. Progress is tracked in one place. Single status snapshot. So that means you have a tracker that tracks. Each owner has a tracker that is in some type of shared location where everyone can see what's the progress of that layer. Something like that. All right, now we come to the end of the presentation. All right. Um, Build the foundation, scale with confidence. I didn't say scale with confidence, build a foundation. No, I said build a foundation, scale with confidence. Clear doctrine, clean governance, compliant nonprofit, sustainable commercial engine, trusted execution platform. We're building a system that is legal, scalable, and resilient, not dependent on any single person. That part right there is very important because what you see in the past is you have people who is like a single point of failure. Everything flows to them. Everything depends on them. Or you have one organization that does everything, and that is a single point of failure. It is easy to take down your organization. It is easy to take down your community because you did not decentralize the authorities and decisions and power amongst your organization. So if someone does try to attack you from outside, it's easy to take you out. From outside looking in, you should look like one overarching, you should look like one entity. But internally, you're not one. You're multiple different agencies working together, with the digital layer being the cheese plate that bridges everyone's together, so everyone has access to the information that they need from various entities working in an awesome environment. But you shouldn't just be one thing, right? And there's a lot of, for compliance reasons and whatnot. So we're building a system that is legal, scalable, and resilient, not depending on a single person, also not on a single entity. Next focus for the Leopard Society is finish the foundation layers and lock the operation rhythm. All right, and I'm gonna end on this note. Execution creates clarity. Once the foundation is stable, scaling becomes repeatable. Execution creates clarity. Once the foundation is stable, scaling becomes repeatable. One more time for the people in the back of the class. Execution creates clarity. Once the foundation is stable, scaling becomes repeatable. Once again, I want to thank you all for watching my live stream. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or anything, some questions about the about NeoState framework or just about the Leopard Society, please feel free to contact me. You can comment below, send me a private message, and I'm more than happy to go over more about this. But like I said, this what we went over today is actually the Leopard Society organization I helped co-founded, and this is, as you see, this is the architecture. So let me go back to our reverse pyramid so you can see. So all of that, the strategic report, the PMA, the 501c3 holding company, NeoState, this all 5 layers make up the organization. All right, that's the key. You have separation of authority and responsibility, decentralized power and authority, while using a digital tool to help with execution, workflows, accountability, and transparency. That is how we should operate in the 21st century. That is how we should be thinking moving forward as a people, is how can we utilize technologies and practical laws and regulations to allow us to establish our own coexistent society that operates parallel to the greater society. All right, that is how we should be thinking moving forward. So once again, thank you for watching. Thank you for chiming in. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll talk to you later.